Welcome to Spelling Bee Ninja, where we explore fascinating topics that make you think. Today, we delve into the intriguing world of personal identity, asking the essential question: what makes you, you? If you're intrigued and want to find out more about your identity and what shapes it, make sure to subscribe for free educational content that sparks curiosity and enhances your understanding of the world. Personal identity is a core philosophical question that has puzzled thinkers for centuries. It invites us to reflect on what it means to be the same person from childhood to adulthood. When we think about our lives, we often wonder what makes us the same person today as we were when we were children. This question touches upon various elements of our existence: memory, the body, consciousness, and personality. Let's explore these components more deeply. The concept of personal identity seeks to understand what conditions are necessary and sufficient for a person to persist through various changes. This leads us to think about the roles of memory. If memory plays a critical role in our identity, what happens to someone who loses their memories? Might they be considered a different person? History tells us that this question isn't new. Ancient Greek philosophers were already grappling with the same ideas. For example, Plato and Aristotle laid foundational thoughts that modern philosophers still debate today. It's astonishing how much the implications of personal identity extend into ethics, law, and our understanding of human nature. For instance, if one's identity is primarily tied to the physical body, a person undergoing a full body transplant might be considered the same individual, but it also raises challenges about how much of us is really defined by our physical form. Diving deeper, we can explore psychological continuity theory, which posits that personal identity is based on the continuity of psychological aspects: memory, beliefs, desires, and personality traits. This view asserts that you remain the same as your childhood self due to these psychological connections. The renowned philosopher John Locke championed this theory. He famously claimed that personal identity is not contingent on one's physical body but rather on consciousness and memory. Locke's perspective emphasizes that if you can remember being someone from your past, then you are indeed the same person, regardless of any physical changes. However, this theory isn't without challenges. For example, consider someone suffering from amnesia. How do we categorize their identity if they cannot recall previous memories? Another essential theory is the body theory, which states that personal identity is rooted in the continuity of the physical body. Under this view, you remain yourself as long as you have the same or at least a continuous physical body. The body theory aligns with our intuitive understanding. We often recognize one another based on physical traits. Yet, it also faces its own set of challenges. Imagine if you had a complete body transplant, would you still consider yourself the same person? It's a mind-bending question. Additionally, the fact that our bodies undergo significant changes over time complicates this notion because our cells are constantly being replaced. Philosophers like Locke have pondered our connection with our physical bodies. He utilized a thought experiment involving a prince and a cobbler. If the consciousness and memories of the prince were transferred into a cobbler's body, who would that person really be? Locke argued that it would be the prince since consciousness defines personal identity over the body's attributes alone. This reveals Locke's preference for psychological continuity instead of physical continuity, leading us to the challenges inherent in the memory theory, such as amnesia and whether we can define identity entirely based on memory. We also encounter the soul theory, which suggests that personal identity is determined by the continuity of the soul, a non-physical entity believed to be our true self. This perspective aligns with many religious and spiritual traditions. For example, in Christianity, Islam, and Hinduism, the soul is often thought to maintain its identity through different life experiences. Historically, philosophers like Plato and Descartes have upheld versions of the soul theory, believing the soul represents the essence of a person. Despite its appeal, the soul theory faces criticisms due to its inability to be scientifically observed and the complexity of explaining how the soul interacts with the body throughout life changes. Another compelling thought experiment often referenced in discussions of personal identity is the ship of Theseus. It raises the fascinating question: if a ship's components are gradually replaced one by one, is it still the same ship? And if the old parts are used to construct a new ship, which one can be considered the original? This thought experiment, attributed to the ancient philosopher Plutarch, famously illustrates the complexity of identity in the face of change and is applicable to personal identity in our lives as we undergo transformations physically and mentally. The Ship of Theseus challenges us to think critically about the criteria we use to define identity, exploring whether it's based on physical continuity, psychological continuity, or something entirely different. Furthermore, brain transplant thought experiments add another layer to this discussion. If your brain were transplanted into another person's body, would you still be you? Many individuals instinctively respond yes, since the brain houses our consciousness and memories. However, this scenario raises further probing questions. If your brain were shared between two individuals, would they each maintain part of your identity? These thought experiments underscore the tension between physical and psychological theories of what constitutes identity. Adding to this rich dialogue is the philosopher Derek Parfit. Parfit contested traditional notions of identity, arguing that what really holds significance for survival isn't strictly personal identity but rather psychological continuity and connectedness. He introduced the idea of a teletransporter, a machine that would destroy a body only to recreate it elsewhere. Parfit proposed that if such a process were possible, the essence of your identity might matter less than the survival of your psychological attributes, provoking deeper reflection on how we perceive identity. The implications of personal identity also extend to the realm of ethics, raising vital questions regarding accountability and moral responsibility. For instance, if you are fundamentally different from who you were at a prior point in your life, should you still face consequences for your past actions? What about crimes committed in another stage of your life? Do they still define you? Some philosophers argue that personal identity over time is essential for moral accountability. However, others suggest that individuals can remain responsible for their actions if there is a psychological connection to who they were when they committed those actions. This topic is especially pertinent in discussions about advance directives in healthcare. If a person becomes incapacitated due to dementia, do they still align with the decisions they made when sane? These ethical dimensions of personal identity highlight its profound implications. The exploration of personal identity does not just belong to abstract philosophical discussions but intersects with real-world challenges that shape how we perceive ourselves and interact with society. As we navigate our increasingly technology-infused world, the questions surrounding personal identity become ever more relevant. With advancements in artificial intelligence, brain-computer interfaces, and digital avatars, we find ourselves facing dilemmas once thought to be mere science fiction. If we were to upload our consciousness into a computer, what would that mean for our identity? Would we still be the same person, or would we become something entirely new? These inquiries beckon us to consider what truly defines a person, an engaging reflection that resonates deeply with our shared human experience. In sum, the debate surrounding personal identity captivates our imagination while challenging our understanding of ourselves. Therapeutic, psychological, and technological advancements continually deepen our inquiry into the essence of human identity, inviting us to ponder what makes us unique and irreplaceable. Indeed, contemplating personal identity becomes a journey into what it means to live, connect, and appreciate our complexities. Today, we explored the multifaceted notion of personal identity. We discussed how memory, the body, consciousness, and personality contribute to our sense of self and the various theories, including psychological continuity, body theory, and the soul theory. We examined compelling thought experiments, such as the Ship of Theseus and brain transplants, that illuminate the challenges of defining identity. Furthermore, we explored the ethical implications tied to personal identity and how our evolving technological landscape forces us to reconsider what truly defines us as individuals. This journey into personal identity is not only philosophical but also profoundly relevant to our everyday lives. Thank you for joining us on this enlightening journey through personal identity. We hope you've gained valuable insights and are inspired to continue exploring what makes you, you. Don't forget to subscribe to Spelling Bee Ninja for more thought-provoking lessons that challenge your understanding of the world. Until next time, keep questioning and stay curious.